Alright, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom Deluxe Class Airazor. Airazor here is back again in her Falcon mode, and she looks pretty good. It's the color that they chose to do for this figure is it's a lot closer to what the old toy was. I was kind of hoping that they would do more of the cartoon look, because in the cartoon she had a very really dark gray, almost black color scheme, and the original toy had this kind of like light brown. It was a bit more, I guess, saturated in the original toy. I don't have it here to compare, but so this is like somewhere in the middle, I guess, but it's definitely much lighter than she was in the show, which is kind of a shame, but it still does look good nonetheless. And yeah, as always, like the bird modes for Transformers, especially Beast Wars figures, are like a little bit awkward because they can't really like actually fold up their wings reasonably, which is understandable from an engineering standpoint. But it pulls it off very fairly well. It's got some good articulation, kind of a nice wingspan here. Articulation in this mode, her head can tilt down about that much. It can rotate. Her beak does open, but I've never been able to. Oh, never mind. I was gonna say I've never been able to do it without putting a tool in there, but I guess I've loosened up a little bit. So yeah, her beak opens and closes. It's not too bad. I just took a little forcing the first time that I did it, just putting a soft tool in there and snapping it open. But yep, seems to work fine after that. The wings have several joints. They can fold up there. There's a double hinge here. There's a hinge here, and then there's a swivel here that goes in and out. Be a little bit careful because she's got these tabs here that plug into her back in robot mode to keep the wings all folded up, and they kind of like sit into this little slot here. And when she's packaged, these are actually like the other way around. So like I'll see if I can do it because it's not something I would recommend doing often, but they're kind of up like that. So she can fold up and have her wings on her back in the packaging in robot mode. But be careful when you're actually putting this back over, because you can see I got a little bit of a stress mark on mine because I did it a little bit hastily. But you just want to make sure that tab is actually sitting in that groove, so it's got enough space to kind of make it around that bend, because otherwise if you just like let it get stuck on that tab there, then you might stress out this piece because it is a fairly thin connection there. So that's not really anything on the toy itself. That was my fault for being hasty with it, but it is something to keep in mind, because now that she's like this, I don't ever have to fold her wings like that again, but she is packaged in a way where they're folded in the back like that. But yeah, so that's the wing articulation. The legs, I mean, depends what you want to treat as her legs here, because like obviously it's more so meant to be like her bottom part of her legs here are actually the bird mode legs, and she's got a ball joint at the feet here, and then that can fold back. But you kind of see her whole robot legs kind of chicken legged in here. It's a little awkward looking, but it's not really the biggest deal. It's something we're kind of familiar with bird transformers. It's very similar to her old toy in that way, although I don't think her old toy had the bend here. But yeah, so you can, with the wing articulation, you can kind of get her wings in a more like crouched or perched position where they're folded up a little bit more. It looks weird and boxy, but it's more effort than some bird transformers put into being able to do that. And then you can kind of have her sitting further up if you fold those joints up on the legs. So I'd say it's a pretty good bird mode overall. It's not perfect, and like maybe things could be done to make it better in the future with more bird mode designs, but I don't really see it getting much better than this. But yeah, she comes with these two weapons here, which are kind of her wrist-mounted like missile launchers that she has in the show. And they do have a place to store here. She's just got these holes on her thighs there, and you just plug them in, and they're fairly out of the way since they're so small. So that works for me. I mean, obviously you can see them, but that's good enough storage because they're not super obtrusive to the bird mode. Show her off here with, I'm not going to show her off with the whole team, but just for some size comparisons, there she is with Optimus Primal and Black Arachnia, the other female character in the show. And yeah, I mean, obviously the Beast Wars scale, like these animals don't scale with each other, but they didn't even scale in the show. Like we had giant spiders and giant birds, and you know, slightly larger than average gorillas. So it all works. I mean, that seems fairly accurate to how the show was. But yeah, to transform her. You can take these off. You can. I just kind of leave them on to the end and then move them to where they're supposed to be in robot mode. But they also can store there in robot mode if you want. So I just kind of leave them on for the transformation. But so for the legs here, you want to fold down the shin piece so it's kind of straight like that, and then the thighs actually tab into this gold waist piece in there. So you kind of like undo that, and then you can bring the legs down and just straighten them all out. And then you take the feet, rotate them around so that the robot mode feet are pointing forward. You rotate them around at the shins as well, and then you untab this back feather piece just like that, and then you can rotate the entire waist around. And then her arms, sort of similar to how they were on the original toy, except with an extra bend in there, are just kind of tucked in the back here. So you fold them out and then bend them. That's not her elbow joint. That's like a dedicated joint for transformation. And then you can unfold these shoulder pads here. And then you want to untab this panel from the back here. It sometimes happens on its own, but you just kind of fold it out like that. And then she's got a series of double hinges here. So if you can see, these little gold pieces back here are actually double hinged joints right there. So they're attached to this piece, and then each of those is attached to one of these pieces. So you want to kind of fold that down just a few clicks. It's a little awkward because like there's nothing connecting these joints other than these joints right here and these back here. So you can kind of do it like asynchronously, and that means that like since the joints on all four of these sections are kind of like they're not like they're like soft ratcheted, it means that you can kind of like bend them so one is bending and the other one isn't. And I would be careful about that because like that could stress out the plastic over time. You try to do them as close together as they can be, but they kind of go one and then the other. But yeah, then when you have it kind of in that position where it's sort of like angled up like that, that will allow you to have enough clearance to then activate this joint, which if I would have fixed one thing about that whole arrangement, I probably just wouldn't have made this ratcheted, because that makes it easier to kind of get it async, and it makes it a little bit harder to move this because it's like going on two different soft ratchets there. But so then you fold down the bird mode head to be there, and then you fold down those double hinges the rest of the way. So it's kind of collapsing, and that's, yeah, so you can kind of see what's happening there where it clicked one and then the other. But then when you get it all locked together, this panel will now plug in there using these tabs instead of the further back ones, if you can see it in there, the hole anyway. And then you can tab the feather, the tail feathers back into place, just like it was there. And then the wings, there's a number of things you can do with them. Like I said, in the packaging, and I'm gonna have to do this again, and I don't like doing it, but they're in the packaging, they were folded up like this. I'm not gonna do it with this wing because I'm kind of worried about that joint there. But so if you can see what it looks like on the left side, it had one folded over the other, so it's like a little bit awkward, but it pretty much just like eliminates her having wings. So if that's the look you want to do, you just have to be a little bit careful with that joint. But how it's intended to be, just get it back into the original position there, is you fold it up at this joint, and then this tab will actually go into this slot right here. So you fold that piece up and then fold this double hinge so it's kind of got a zigzag going there. And then you can fold this wing like here. And I'm not sure if this is intentional, but it definitely like cleans up the wings a little bit. When you fold this joint over, it creates just enough of a gap in here that you can then take the swiveled piece of the wing and kind of fold it in between there so it sits like that. And that makes a kind of a neat sort of differentiated little cape in robot mode. So that's how I choose to do it. I'm not sure if you're supposed to I think maybe it's supposed to just be like that, but I think it looks better having those kind of tucked in further like that. It just tightens up the look a little bit. And there she pretty much is in robot mode. Last thing to do here is her little wrist-mounted things that were on her thighs in bird mode now can actually plug into her wrists appropriately. So I guess you could call that a little bit parts forming, but not really, because it's just like general, weapon storage kind of stuff. But yeah, she's got a pretty good look in robot mode. Pretty good articulation too. The head is on a ball joint here, and she's got a pretty good range of movement, so you can get some expressive movement there. The shoulders, obviously, you can move the shoulder pads up and down. They've got a universal joint here where that rotates, and then that hinges in and out as well. Shoulder pads come kind of come with it sometimes, which is maybe a little bit annoying, but not the end of the world. A bicep swivel, a little over 90 of elbow bend. No wrist joint aside from the transformation one, where you're kind of just like breaking her arm midway through the forearm there. She's got a waist swivel, which has enough clearance to kind of get past the tail feathers. Her legs are also on universal joints, so they can go all the way out to the side. They can go forward. Most of the time, they kind of just go around this piece, but if you need it to, this piece does hinge up, which makes it a little bit easier, but looks a little bit worse. She's got a thigh swivel, kind of like midway through the thigh. Her knee joint is just due to transformation, like a really nice deep knee bend. She still does have that, which doesn't really count as robot motor articulation. I wish, since there's like so many other soft ratchet joints in here, I wish that would like locked in place a little bit tighter, but not a big deal. And then still her feet are on ball joints, obviously. So yeah, pretty good articulation. You can have her hold these if you want. Not sure why you would, but you could do that. You can have her hold them as guns. Really, in the show, she kind of had these more on her wrists, and they didn't look exactly like this. I don't think they were gold or anything, but they kind of just like came out of her wrists. But it gets the effect done good enough for me, at least. So yeah, the main thing that I have with this figure is like I kind of wish that she really was more of that sort of like dark gray blackish color that she was in the show. I just think it would look a little bit cleaner. And then the other strange thing that like this kind of brings back to what I said about Dinobot last week is her face is like this really nice metallic purple, but in the show her face wasn't really that color. Like it might have had a slight purple tint to it, but it was really mostly silver. So I'm not entirely sure why they made that choice. And it was the same kind of thing with Dinobot's weapon, which I think this is actually just molded plastic, so it might just be a coincidence. But like his sword was silver in the show, so I'm not really sure why it's done in this purple. But yeah, otherwise her face sculpt looks pretty good. Got some nice paint apps there for the eyes. And get it to focus a little bit better. You can kind of see. But yeah. I'll show her off with some of the gang. Here's Black Arachnia with her in robot mode. So you can see pretty average size Kingdom Deluxe. They pretty much meet eye to eye there, which I feel is probably the scale in the show. I feel like maybe Airazor was a little bit bigger, but not by a whole lot. And then here she is, of course, again with bringing the whole crew this time. I didn't really feel like transforming quite all of them into beast modes just because it's a lot of figures, but here they all are together. And they're looking pretty good so far. Not in the middle of the shot, but good. And yeah, I mean, I'll transform them all back to alt mode once we finally get that new Tigatron that's going to be coming. But they're a good looking crew, and that scale seems about right, about the same height as Cheetor. She might have been a little bit shorter in the show, but that seems right to me. But yeah, she's a pretty good figure overall. I'd say, if I had one nitpick, it's just that I wish that the colors were a little bit more show accurate. But overall, I mean, she's a great looking figure. Pretty good in both modes. The bird mode is not perfect, but it gets enough of the job done, I think. Especially since, like, I know that that's kind of a challenge. Like, it looks good when the wings are spread out, but obviously it's hard to make it so that she can actually have her wings sort of organically folded up. But yeah, pretty good figure overall. I definitely would recommend her. But yeah, if you enjoyed my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do BotBots reviews on Tuesdays and Thursdays generally, and then other reviews like these on Sundays. And without further ado, here we have Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom Wave 2 Airazor.